Hello, hello. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate you. Sorry there was so much drama with this link. I was there all by myself and I'm like, I know there's like 31 people that have, signed up to be here. And so sorry about that. Now we have the right link. We have people here. We're started. And hopefully anyone who has signed up will just see the space and click the picture and join us. All right, so let's jump into it because we've lost a little bit of time and we want to empower you all to be relationship experts as quickly as possible. So, a little about me. I have a master's in clinical behavioral psychology, specializing in relationships. I've published papers. I do what I preach. I have an amazing husband who is the best dream come true in my life. He's actually here on the call. Armand is his name. I've actually got my brother here as well, which is super awesome. Mazda is here, so you're going to be hearing the honest truth from me. And we're very lucky today to also have a very close friend of mine, Vita, here. And she is just going to speak out of my phone whenever she has thoughts or comments. And she's actually the inspiration of today's topic, which is knowing your worth. And I think she is good at knowing this, and I think her input on here is going to be really helpful. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that's the best way to learn things. So I appreciate you guys coming. All right, so let's have a quick and just so you guys know, at any point, if you have questions, stories, comments, that's what we're here for. Feel free to request to be speaker. Say anything you want to say. I'm just trying to share as much value as I can, and we always learn better from one another when we're interacting and engaging with each other because it's more interesting that way. You don't want to hear my whole voice for about an hour. So it's always welcomed at any point at all to do that. I'm gonna welcome it and be so excited when people speak. So just know that at any point. Now let's have a quick recap of last week. Last week was boundaries, which is very related to this week's topic. So, quick recap from last week was it's really good to know your bandwidth of how much you can say yes to without being resentful. And usually, when little frustrations build up, we brush it off and we say, it's okay, this is not a big deal. Like, I can take this, or, this is nothing. But then, these things keep building up. And then that's when you slowly feel resentful and you're not sure where it comes from, but you just kind of feel it and this underlying thing. And it's just a buildup of these things. So practicing knowing when our boundaries are crossed, even a little, that we should be able to practice speaking up and saying what we want so these little things don't build up. And it's usually better to say no or compromise than, be resentful because it can come out in a much uglier way. So if we say it in a little way, it's usually much better than a blowout explosion or, not feeling attracted to your partner anymore or becoming overly anxious or something like that. It has many repercussions. So you'll just be much happier in the long run and much less burnt out if you can address these little frustrations as they happen, and you'll be much happier for it in the long run. And people that have done this can attest to it working. And yeah, so the other end of it is if you notice you're always saying no or you're saying no quite often, it's probably a good goal to increase your bandwidth to try and say yes more or compromise more. So there's two ways. There's two sides of this story, but I think more people usually say yes than they say no. So that's why I emphasize on the first part more. All right, so before we go on to today's topic, does anyone have any questions about boundaries or anything that they want to bring up? I'll just give you guys a moment to put your hand up or unmute if you want to. Okay, awesome. At any point, if you do want to bring something up about boundaries, always feel free to do that. Welcome, welcome. We have a new person. Happy to see you. Okay, so Liz, you came just on time to cover this week's topic, knowing your worth. Okay, so a lot of people, when they're looking for a partner in the dating side of life, they settle much more easily, or they think that, someone great doesn't exist. And so, if someone fills in a couple of boxes, that they are just going to be okay with that because they think, well, this person has these good qualities, but, I probably can't find better, or all sorts of things. And so I want you guys to remember that if you exist, so someone as good as you can also exist too. So you are the living proof that someone else just as great can also exist. It's not impossible, because if you're great, you exist, then it's likely that someone else will also exist who's also great. And so don't settle until you found someone great, because great exists. So I really want to drum that home. You can be with someone who's really great, that you're really happy to be with them. That's not impossible. That's not a fairy tale. The better you know what you're looking for, the more you can recognize greatness when you stumble across it. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, then it's really hard to know if the person you found is better than the one before, because every person's different and there's all sorts of things that you can confuse yourself on. So just go for greatness and you'll know when you found it. Um, and that helps when you know what you want. You know when you found it because you've thought about these things. And if you guys ever are not sure what to consider, what your preferences are, I've really built like quite an extensive list that my friend Bita here has filled in, and it's taken hours. But it doesn't have to take that long if you go at your own pace and answer them. So if anyone wants access to that list so you can figure out your own preferences and see, what you're looking for, that's a really good tool to have. So feel free to DM me to access a list of preferences for you guys to figure out what you're looking for. I'm happy to do that. Another thing I want to highlight on knowing your worth before we go into our Reddit questions and practice these skills is, it's very natural for us to fall for, people that aren't great for us if we grew up with parents or caregivers that didn't have great relationships, because that's what's normal to us. That feels, even though it's counterintuitive, because it's not good for us, but we feel comfortable there because that's what we've known all our life. So we actually get drawn towards people that are not good for us, usually, if that's the history of, the people we grew up around, because that's what feels comfortable and like home. And we keep choosing people like that over and over again. And it really takes, some intentional action, to be able to break out of that cycle and notice it and realize that, you know, what it's like to even have a good relationship, and what kind of people possess a relationship like that and are capable of having healthy relationships and have that growth to be able to, um, you know, have that. So that is something that, for example, myself, I really had to practice that, because my parents had a really bad relationship and we went through 10 years of court proceedings, and I had an abusive father, and his family was very abusive. So I grew up with that all around me. And so yeah, I definitely fell for a lot of people that, didn't like me back or just maybe weren't great for me. And I really had to be intentional and know what I wanted in a partner to be able to find my husband who I am with today. So he was a great guy, and he treated me really well. And being even attracted to that, or knowing what that looks like to be attracted to it, is a whole skill in itself. So if you're repeatedly falling for like a type of guy, and you're like, oh, this is just my type of guy, or why do I always fall for people that don't like me, or like bad guys or bad girls that don't treat me well, there's probably, more to it. And we're just falling into patterns of people that we've seen around us that maybe aren't so helpful. So that's an important thing to note. Um, and then, really, if you're at this dating stage, you want to be able to know your preferences and sift through people as quickly as you can and move on quickly. So, once you know what you're looking for, you can go to places that have those sorts of people. And then, when you know what's important to you, for example, if you're someone that wants to get married in 2 years, that is something that someone needs to know, because you want to be on the same page and not waste your time with someone who's not in a million years going to be ready to get married in 2 years, if that's what you want. So, or if you really want kids, that's something that I am all encouraging to bring up on the first date, because if someone really wants kids and one really doesn't, and you don't talk about it for 6 months, you've built up all these feelings, and now you're really hurt that they don't want it, and it's going to take you a while to move on, or you're going to stay in that relationship and feel quite resentful and attack them in all sorts of ways because you're not happy and then they're not happy and all sorts of things. So save yourself all these troubles if you have deal breakers, and address them at the beginning, so then you can filter people. And I want you guys to filter people really quickly so you can get really great quality. Quality is where it's at, guys. And the quicker you can sift through people, you can improve your system of being able to find quality. And then when you do find it, you'll know how great it is because you knew what you were looking for. And so that's really important. A lot of us get stuck when we, date someone, or like we've been with them for a bit, and we have all our emotions attached to them. It takes us months to move on and try again, or for some people, years. And, that's such a wasted opportunity, because we need to be able to practice the skill of being able to find quality. And if you've got big gaps of time where you're not looking, that can really reduce your search. We need a large sample size so we can filter through and get quality. Honestly, if you've maybe like explored a relationship with 5 people, your odds of finding really high quality in 5 people is really low. But if you've like assessed 100 people or 1,000 people and filtered them down, your chances of finding quality is so much higher. So that's just a bit of a food for thought to think about. Knowing your worth, so knowing you're worth something great if you are a great person yourself, and really working on your system to find someone as equally great or greater. So that's a good one to note. Okay, I'm just reading through my list before we get through the Reddit questions. And then another thing. So now let's say that you are with someone, you're in a relationship, and it's very natural. No two people are going to be the same. So someone's going to do something that bothers the other person, and you need to be able to know your worth, to know that it's not okay for someone to treat you like that if they're treating you badly. And then being able to communicate directly to your partner, say, I felt embarrassed, I felt hurt, I felt whatever emotion you're feeling, and then saying, that you didn't appreciate that behavior. Remember, we never attack the person. We never say, oh, you're so selfish for doing that. That's really bad. We want to say that behavior that you did, made me feel whatever, angry, uncared for, whatever it is you're feeling. So attack behavior, don't attack character. Because if you attack character, they're going to start embracing that into their own identity and narrative as a person. And that's just not working in your favor. If they start thinking that they're a selfish person because you're calling them selfish, that is not working for you. They're going to think, oh, I'm a selfish person. I guess this is what selfish people do. And they're going to try and find evidence to support that they're selfish. And that's definitely not what you want. So if you attack behavior, that's something that people usually figure out that they can improve. Like, you can improve your behavior, but if someone says you're selfish, it's like, how do you improve that if that's part of you already? It's just keep it simple, attack the behavior, and then directly say what you want to improve the situation. And so the other end of that coin is when someone says that to you, and this is the hard part. It's much easier to tell someone else maybe you're upset, but when someone tells you that they're upset with your behavior, please take that seriously. And when they ask for what they want to make the situation better, really listen to that, and try and say yes or compromise if they are worth it. So one thing is knowing your worth, but another thing is knowing someone else's worth. And if you are with someone great, knowing their worth and, making them feel appreciated and loved is really important, and vice versa. And you want a partnership as a really strong team of both working together. And a part of human nature also, when someone says that they're upset with something that you've done, our default is to get defensive. So when someone says, "I'm upset at you," it's very natural for you to respond and be like, "Well, I'm upset at you with this." And now we've got two people upset and we're just going in circles. So first address the first person that's upset, and then once they have their stuff figured out, then if you're still upset, you can now say why you're upset, and now the other person can try and be there for you. So take turns in being upset, because that just makes things easier instead of you both just yelling at each other or however it is you resolve arguments. So, knowing someone else's worth and growing is important. Sometimes it's quite often that I hear people have the same arguments over and over again. And, someone says, "But I've told them, this really upsets me. And, they told me not to bring it up again, or we get nowhere every time we bring it up." And so one of the things we have to do is see how they're communicating it, improve the communication, and really the other person needs to understand that it's not okay to continue repeatedly doing something that is not okay with your partner, because then you're kind of contributing to purposely making them upset when you know it makes them upset. So there's also a limit to knowing your worth and how many times you're willing to have someone intentionally not to do it. Putting your foot down and saying, "I've told you this. We've had this conversation 3 times where I've brought it up directly. Something needs to change. This is not okay to, just not care about this. It's affecting me." So, also knowing that boundary of, when someone is not growing with you. People need to grow on both sides. It's a two-way street. So that's a quick summary of knowing your worth. Does anyone have any questions or any comments or any stories or anything at all that they want to bring up about knowing your worth before we jump into some Reddit questions? Okay, we got a quiet bunch today. That's okay. That's okay. We can jump into some Reddit questions in just a moment. I'm going to ask my friend Bita if she has anything she wants to add to knowing your worth, since she's a pretty great superstar at this.
I wouldn't say I'm a great superstar at this. Kimia says that a lot. Just the piece about not settling. I feel like it's important to not settle, but also to be willing to do the compromise. That's like the one thing I would say is that since nobody's perfect, and she did mention that we're all human. I read this book a couple months back called like "Marry Him: The Case for Settling for Mr. Good Enough," and it's talking about the importance of not letting like stupid things get in the way of what could be a really amazing relationship. Like if you think the person is perfect, except for the fact that they wear this like ugly flamingo shirt, then like you should probably still be with that person and find a way to look past that. That's the one thing I would say is that like know your worth, but like, you know, if you're not Angelina Jolie, then like why are you expecting Brad Pitt, you know?
That's a good one. I love the
Exactly.
flamingo shirt. Yes,
I was
yes.
just going to say the same thing. Compromise, man. Compromise is a big thing in a relationship, but you need to know what you're going to compromise for them in turn for what they're compromising for you. Is it going to equal out? Is it their compromise not going to work for you? Are you going to have to move on because everybody has something that somebody may not like about them. There's good things and bad things about people. So he's got to find the ones that are going to be worth some of the compromises that you're going to have to make. But some of those compromises will lead you down a happier path.
I couldn't agree more. Yes. Yes. And knowing, yeah, yeah, and having that conversation, if and knowing what's a deal breaker for you, and what's a deal breaker for your partner, and figuring that out really quickly so you don't waste each other's time. And a big thing I think is being growth oriented and willing. You know, we can all improve on something. Like if someone says, "I this is who I am. I'm not willing to." Improve anything, like just that's a bit of a problem because we all have to improve. Nobody's perfect and no two people are identical. So you're going to have differences. And it's a really, really good quality when you hear, when you say to someone, I'm upset. Oh, I want Bita, tell the story. So this happened like literally yesterday. And someone, she noticed something that she wanted improved in another person, and she said it. And yeah, tell people how that person responded. You don't have to name them, they can be anonymous, but just say how that conversation went out.
Yeah, so someone I'm in like the very early stages of a relationship with isn't super great about texting, and I feel like I'm always the one who's initiating a conversation, and it kind of feels like I'm forcing them to hang out with me. So I like told this person that I felt this way. They said like, I absolutely do not want you to feel this way. I will work on that. And then a couple hours later, like, and I didn't respond, and then I was working, and a couple hours later, they initiated a new conversation asking about my plans for the evening. So like, if people I've heard, this is kind of unrelated, but I've also heard people say that like, oh, if they want to they will, and I think that that's true, but sometimes they want to and they can't. So I think it's also about finding that balance of someone who wants to do something and someone who also has the capacity to do the things that you need them to do, and then to be in a relationship with that person instead of like trying to chase someone who either can't or isn't willing to do it for you.
Yes, and the reason I really like that example is because, there's a lot of things that went into place with that. It's a very simple story, but there's a lot going on. Bita knew her worth, that, she doesn't, it's not okay for her to feel like she's always messaging. And, a lot of people might think that, oh, it's okay that that happens, and, it's okay to feel like you want someone else to message you first, or things like that. So, one, it's noticing that, knowing your worth, that it's okay to want what you want. And the next step is to say what you want directly, in a nice way. And like that's finessing, there's as long as if you don't know how to word something, just word it honestly. That's the best way you can do it. If you don't know how to word it, and then you can always, soften it, and there's ways to finesse it, but I don't want to make it too complicated. So just say what you want honestly and directly, what you want them to do in the future for you to feel more loved. And then you want their reaction to be like, yes, I'm going to do that, or okay, I'm going to work on that. That's the ideal reaction. So, and if someone doesn't give you that, again, knowing your worth, is it okay for someone to be like, "Oh, no, this is just how I am?" That's not showing growth, and that's not showing any care for your feelings. And knowing that is really, not many people know that part. So knowing your worth can really play up in a lot of different ways. That's why I love the simplicity of that story. But there's two clear points where she had to know her worth, and he had to step up and show that he valued her worth. So there's like actually a lot going on in there. All right. So thank you, Bita. Your contribution was amazing. All right. So let's jump into some Reddit questions. I know we all like our Reddit questions. So let's see if we can put these skills to practice with each other. So there's a 36-year-old female and a 26-year-old male. So they're 10 years apart, and the female is older. So the subject line is, girlfriend, I feel, is making me choose between school and her. So let's unpack this story. There's a little bit to it, so stay with me. Okay, so it says, hello everyone. So I just had a breakup and I'm a little confused. Things escalated very quickly the first week. We spent every day with each other, and I put school off for a week to do that, and other things I had to get done at home. We actually got physical in a few days. After the first week, I explained that I couldn't go to her house every day because I had to go back to school and stop neglecting things at home. So I would tell her which days I could go to her house during the week. After the second week, on a Saturday, I texted her good morning and started doing schoolwork. She texted me good morning, and I was occupied with school, so I didn't text her back right away. A couple of hours later, She said, "I think you're too busy for a relationship," and a few minutes later said, "Too busy for this conversation?" Question mark, exclamation mark. And I asked if I could go talk to her about it. Sorry. Well, we talked, and it seemed like she expected all my time from the get go, almost like we've been living together. We dated another month and then broke up for different reasons, which was partly my fault because I didn't tell her I was going out for drinks after work and she felt I was ignoring her. Anyways, I was wondering if you guys think it was even worth trying after the second week. I know we escalated quickly, but we had a good connection in chemistry and got along really well. And I feel breaking up because I'm trying to further my education doesn't really make sense to me. I would think she would want to be supportive and would appreciate the time that I'm able to spend with her, just like I appreciate the time she can spend with me. Yeah, I could bring my laptop to her house and do school, but that's just me doing school at her house and not spending quality time with her. I would like to have input because I don't want anything like this to happen again and I don't want to be a bad boyfriend. Okay. So the summary of that one, if you cut in and out at any point, was, is it worth trying to work on a relationship when they are willing to break up with you if they don't get all your time after only 2 weeks together? So let's say you had a friend and they came to you with this story and they're like, please, you're a relationship expert now. You go to these sessions every week. Can you help me? What would you say? Where would you go from there? Does anyone want to take a bold leap forward and say how they would react to this sort of situation? I see Andrea is connecting. Maybe she will have something she wants to say.
Just to be clear, what exactly are they telling? Like they're telling me this whole Reddit question. This is before they broke up, after they broke up.
So this is after they broke up, and it seemed well. We obviously don't know the full story. It's a one-sided story, so it looks like they broke up, and it was about something else that they broke up. He says, but he wants to know if he's done something wrong and if he should have cut things off earlier or if he should have done something differently. Um, he's just confused about this situation.
I got it. Yeah, I think something I didn't hear. First of all, I don't think either person is necessarily at fault. If she wants him to spend more time with her, that's okay. Like you're allowed to want things and feel a certain way. If, he wants to focus more time on school, that's okay. He's allowed to want things and feel how he feels. It feels like the issue is they didn't agree, or maybe they never even talked about what, how much time this was. So if I was him or if I was talking to him, or I guess Andrea's raising her hand. You can say words if you want.
No, no, please go ahead. You can finish first. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah, if I was his friend, I would just say something along the lines of, look, whenever you guys had this problem, there was this obvious difference. And in order to keep it from happening again, next time there is a problem like this, you need to talk about it. She needs to, you need to have a conversation about, hey, what do you want? What do you need? In the ideal scenario, and have her say it. And, kind of like you said, if he knows, maybe his boundaries and what he wants and doesn't want, he can then decide, hey, is this something that I feel like I can, do or provide? And then, if he does, or if he feels like, or they can come up with a compromise, then the relationship goes forward. If not, then they both save a month of their lives. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Armand. And for people that are new to the space, that's my husband who was speaking. So awesome advice. Awesome advice. Let's hear from some other people. Andrea, go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm finally coming up to speak this time. I know I couldn't last week, but yeah, I think what your husband mentioned was it's very, very accurate. One of the other things I wanted to pretty much it jumped at me pretty much right away, even from the beginning of the story, and then I was like, I'll keep my opinion. I'll wait till the very end before I keep my opinion and consensus. But this is actually something I've struggled with before, actually. And I wouldn't say I'm not saying I'm the girl or I was the guy, but more so in the context of when you are first starting a relationship with somebody new, it's really exciting in the beginning. You're like, I really like this person. I want to spend all my time with them. Blah, blah, blah. We kind of fall into that trap of not setting proper boundaries in the beginning. I know this is tying back to the topic that we had last week about setting setting proper boundaries in place so that in the end the person that you want to date or you want to involve your life with at most they should be somebody that adds value to your life, and you shouldn't necessarily be changing your entire life, especially for someone who is brand new. It should be a great addition to your life and adds value to your life, but not to say to completely change everything. I've definitely have done that. I've fallen victim to that before. Probably more so when I was younger, because I'm like, I just want to spend all my time with this person. But I learned over time that it takes time to build a great relationship with somebody. And I think I know the first thing is they spent almost every day together, if I understand correctly from the story, which is totally fine. It can happen. I don't think there's anything wrong per se. However, I think there should have been a conversation, or at least having more communication about, what is going on in each other's lives, so that he is in school. So maybe communicating to her that this is not reality, right? Like, this is not how it's going to be moving forward, right? I can give an example, actually. This is when, COVID just started after I started a new relationship with somebody. And it set a false expectation of what was actually our life. I said, this is not reality. Like, just so you know that when things start to open up again, it's not going to be like this. But unfortunately, my partner at the time, when things did start to become normal again, I did say and I did communicate that things are going to change, and he didn't like it. He liked it the way it was when it was during COVID. And so, I think the main point I wanted to get across here is that the boundaries were not set in place, and that, by setting healthy boundaries where if you spend, maybe once or twice a week, or at least having an idea for yourself, what is a healthy amount of time to spend with somebody new in the beginning, I think is good to establish, and to not fall into that trap of, seeing them every day for a week and then totally pushing aside your responsibilities and obligations, because I think it does set a false expectation of what is actually going to proceed with the relationship. But that's just my viewpoint. Hopefully I didn't completely ramble, but I'm speaking from experience that this has happened to me before. And I've definitely learned from those experiences. And so I'm much more cautious to not get caught up in the feelings of somebody new, and just to give it more time and to not sacrifice my lifestyle.
Thank you. Thank you. I love when people share stories and give their input. I think there's so much wisdom in, the things that we learn, and we can share and we can learn from one another. And it's so amazing when different people explain things in their own way, because when someone explains it in one way, it may not hit for someone, but when someone else explains it in a different way, it can definitely hit. So I think you've both added a lot of value to this space. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this one in any way, or anything that stood out to them? Odin, go for it. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, and nice to be here. So actually, I'm from Macedonia, and it's quite late here, Eastern Europe. But I was waiting for your episode to start. I especially wanted to join in the last week, but I slept, unfortunately. But this time I got it, so I am happy for that. So maybe it's just me, but one aspect of this just took my attention. If I am not mistaken, the lady there was 10 years older than the one who posted in Reddit, or is
Correct.
it
Good
correct?
catch. Good
So
catch.
in such cases, I mean, maybe I am a bit old-fashioned, you may say that, but such a age gap naturally brings some problems, especially if the woman is a bit older, and 10 years is not something that can cope with very easily, especially when the person is around his mid-20s. So whatever the problems, perhaps this might be the main reason. I'm sure many can come up with some relationship examples that such age differences could cause no problem. But in naturally, I think it's not very possible because due to the effects of time and for the other reasons, especially when the woman is a bit older, like 10 or more, then in every relationship it's very difficult to work, and especially in the later years to come. And that's what I wanted to say. And also to learn your perspective about this, because probably you studied this in many other ways that I can think of. So
Yeah, yeah,
uh, perhaps when such age difference is between man and woman, but the man is a bit older, then perhaps the problems may not be that much for some reason. But in
yeah,
that case, this might be the reason of these, difficulties they faced. So that
yeah.
was
They
all. Okay.
I appreciate you. This is an interesting point to talk about. And I love how you caught that because we all catch different things when we hear these stories and they're, amazing things that we can learn from each of these different points. So you brought up age, and that's a good one to talk about. So um, so from what science has found from doing so much research into, what makes relationships work and what doesn't, similarity is what helps. Had they found similarity is the biggest predictor of seeing if someone is going to stay together and be happily staying together, so happily married or happily in the relationship in the long run. And it's similarity in as many ways as possible. That doesn't mean that, if there's an age gap in either direction, it's not going to work. But it does make it more difficult. You are from now different generations, and that's something that you have to kind of found new ways to connect with each other. A situation that it could work, for example, is if both people didn't care about age, and there are some people that honestly don't see age as a barrier. That maybe they're not the majority, but they definitely do exist. So if two people that really age doesn't bother them and they're similar in that belief, that definitely helps. Another thing for women is if they do want to have kids, it becomes more problematic. And, maybe they want things to move much quicker because they do, as hard as it is to admit, if someone does want kids, there is a limit to, how long maybe they can have kids naturally. Maybe they don't want to necessarily have it naturally, or they want to adopt, and that's okay. There's all sorts of preferences people have. Another one is if they don't want to have kids, then that's one big less thing to worry about, and an age gap may not be much of a problem at all because they don't see age, they don't want to have kids, and so those things, having similar beliefs, can make a very big difference. But yes, if someone does want to have kids, it can, cause a bit of a difference if two people's kind of blueprint for the timeline of how their relationship progresses is different. That can cause a lot of conflict. And you are right, in the story, it did say they broke up for another reason. So who knows? Maybe that could be related, and it was just not mentioned. But that's a really good thing to bring up. And I think it's important to note that if someone says they don't care about age, um, and we're assuming they're telling the truth, there really are some people that are okay with a 10-year age gap, but it may not be that common. So don't just assume someone is not meaning what they say, because those people do exist. But this is why, again, your preferences for what you want in a partner is so important. So if wanting kids is a deal breaker for you and you want to have kids in like 2 years or 3 years or next year, your partner needs to know that, and you need to be on the same page. Maybe she's thinking, I'm going to move in 3 months, and he's got no idea that she's got these plans. So definitely know what you want and then communicate that and make sure you're on the same page. And remember, similarity is one of the best indicators for couples working. And don't worry, you're not going to be too similar, because no two people are identical and you'll have lots to argue about. But at least on a lot of things you do agree. And so when you agree on a lot of things, you have more time to have fun because you're just arguing less. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll let you know what stood out for me in this story. They gave one example in this story, which was how he said that she responded to him when he didn't text her for a few hours because he was at school. And she texted him, I think you're too busy for a relationship. And a few minutes later said, busy for this conversation, question mark, exclamation mark. So if that was her actual words, or if we assume that was her actual words, that's a very indirect way of communicating. So I want to put it to the crowd. Who can decrypt this message and directly be able to ask what she is asking for? So clearly she's upset. And I want to note that humans, we usually, when we get upset, we speak indirectly to one another, and it's very unhelpful. And we all got to practice speaking directly, including me. Sometimes I speak indirectly too. And now I've taught my husband that this is not okay. So he calls me out, and then I really have to reword what I'm saying. And I do that. It's important. So if does someone want to take a guess at deciphering this text, I think you're too busy for a relationship for this conversation. Who wants to try and decode that into what she's really asking for? Let's see if we got any brave people in the audience today. Oh, we got a hand. Okay. Omid, go for it. So Omid is my other brother. I'm so excited to have him here today. Go for it. If you want to unmute.
I'm the brother from down under. All right. That is fabulous. I think what she's really trying to say, it's very indirect, but like if you word it very carefully, I think it's her way of going, I want thanks for the time, but it's not going to work out.
That could, yeah, she's definitely communicating she's not okay with it. So you're on the ball there. What do you think she wants? If someone says that, what do you think they want?
She wants someone that's devoted to her wholly and nothing else, but this person has uni that they have to take care of. She wants someone that she can spend every second of every day with.
It's true. She may want that. Maybe her expectations are very unrealistic. That's possible. That's possible. If I had to try and take a guess, and we're all guessing what she wants. No, none of us are her. But if I had to try and take a guess of what she's trying to say is, it says, okay, so he said he took a couple of hours to respond. So I'm going to assume a couple of hours is 2 hours. So it seems like 2 hours of not responding is hitting her boundary. So maybe her barrier is 1 hour. I'm upset you didn't. So this is, if I was trying to translate it directly, I would say, I'm upset that you didn't respond to me in 2 hours. I would really appreciate if you could respond to me within 1 hour, or let me know why you can't respond. So letting me know, oh, hey, I'm at school. I can't respond for the next 5 hours. So that is directly asking for what you want. If you want them to change their communication style, you need to be specific. Andrea and Odin, I see your hands. Go for it.
Yeah, you pretty much touched it, actually. So I was just gonna I put my hand up. So I was like, I think she pretty much covered what I was gonna say. Because I've definitely, I guess I'm somebody that does takes time in between texting, and I think as long as it's clear in terms of what you are doing, right? Like, especially for me as a boundary, it's like, okay, this person's in school. That's a no-brainer, at least for me. But in this case, it sounds like she's not taking into consideration that he is in school. And to me, it's not considerate. But that's just my viewpoint on that. I think her expectations, maybe for what she's looking for in terms of her boundaries and expectations, is something that he cannot meet or may not have the capacity to do so. Maybe not right now that he's in school, but that could change when he's not in school. So there needs to be some compromise or some flexibility involved with that. But I think he did make it clear that he was in school. He was at school. So I think this is more potentially for her to work with him in terms of, okay, when you're in school, this is what I need in terms of from a communication aspect of things. Otherwise, she cannot expect him to be messaging him back in the time zone that she wants, right? I mean, I'm somebody that takes sometimes 6 hours to respond to somebody, but that's because I'm devoted to my career and I can't be texting all the time. So I think having that communication ahead of time with the person you are dating, that listen, my job, I can't always be on my phone. And I will get back to you when I can. And I do think there is a responsibility of the other person they need to trust in that, right? So if they're not, then that's an issue already. That is something that the person needs to work on. But that's just my viewpoint.
Yes, yes. And this is the start of the conversation. So as soon as, like, no matter how unreasonable people's expectations are, it's better for them to communicate it so we can see where they're starting out and how ridiculously far off it is from what we're expecting. So I would encourage everybody to have this conversation. If you're, considering someone, don't be in limbo and try and figure this out. Have an upfront conversation about it and ask, how frequently do you expect me to respond, or this is usually my boundary with how quickly I respond. And then you have that conversation of like what is okay, and you come up with something and you kind of figure it out together. And if it doesn't work, you find out right there that this isn't going to work. So yes, agree with you. Odin, I see your hand up. Go for it.
So I want to bring some different approach to this. Perhaps the reason she wants to spend so much time with him is not so, how to say it, it's not so innocent. I mean, in the sense that, of course, I'm going to bring up the difference of the age again. She doesn't want him to go to his school, etc., spend some time with his friends with the fear of losing him, perhaps because he might meet someone with his classmates, etc., who can get along better because of that reason, and perhaps she's too afraid to lose him to someone younger than her. And please don't get this the wrong way, but sometimes women are over jealous of their own gender, and this might be some underlying reason of this. Just a thought. So
Yeah, no,
please
no,
no
I agree.
offense.
I
Okay.
agree it could be
Okay.
that. And as soon as you open up the conversation of saying that this is my expectation, that you respond every, you know, hour, if that's what it is for her, then, if he can, if he's having like a strong reaction to that, he can be like, oh, wow, so when I'm at school, like, that's really not something that I can provide. And then he's like, I'm curious, like, why? Do you feel the need to, is there something you're worried about? And then you can start that conversation to understand, why she constantly wants that. And if she hopefully has enough awareness, and if that's what she's experiencing, that she's worried, he might find someone else younger, she can bring that up. And, if, they can help each other through it, then it's a great match. And if it's not, they can really figure out what's going on pretty quickly. So that could absolutely be an underlying reason. Or maybe she wants him to go to work and not go to school and earn some money. Who knows what's going on in her head? So we're not going to know until we have these conversations. Houdini, I see your hand. Go for it.
Hey, I was listening away. I'm busy, but you sucked me in
Hey.
with this one once you got to the Reddits, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for having me up. Great space as usual. I think, I don't know who said it, but whoever was saying the thing a minute ago, delicately, I think that's important. And I don't think it matters if it's a man or a woman, but I think the one partner like allowing the other partner to go off to a place of young people and, you know, to me have new friends and stuff is hard. And then if they're worried about it, it shows an insecurity of some kind, maybe a healthy one, but there's an insecurity there of some kind, I think. So yeah, that's a valid point.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that point and just, you know, bringing it home a little more. The more people bring things up and emphasize it, the more we can actually take it seriously and be like, huh, that's a good point. The last thing on this one, I know we like to get through multiple Reddit questions, but another thing I wanted to bring up that stood out to me was that he said, you know, not spending quality time with her if he was there at her house and doing schoolwork. And I know the very first week of doing Twitter Spaces 16 weeks ago, we were talking about love languages. And so, you know, even in the category of quality time, she might think that him doing schoolwork and her doing whatever it is she does in the same space in the same room is actually, you know, something that she really appreciates, and it does mean a lot to her. So, and for him it might not be quality time at all, and it might be something that actually is a hindrance rather than something that helps. So figuring out like each other's love languages of what you actually appreciate is a huge thing. So maybe if he does work at her house and do schoolwork, maybe she doesn't expect him to respond for 8 hours while he's at school because he spent that time with her at her house and they were able to just independently do their own thing. So we really don't know what they appreciate in their love languages for each other. But just from what I'm sensing, he doesn't think it's beneficial to anyone if he's just in the same space with someone doing his own thing. And it seems like she really appreciates being in the same space with someone, even if they're not doing something together. So that's an interesting note to just think about in your own relationships with love languages and how you guys differ, because no two people are going to be the same. And your biggest thing is trying to figure out what your partner appreciates, so then they can feel more loved, and when they feel more loved, they'll make you feel more loved, and it's just a positive cycle that's happening. All right, so are you guys, I'm feeling like you guys are ready for the next question. Okay, so next one is a 25-year-old female and a 35-year-old male. So now we're the other way around. And the title of this one is My Boyfriend Left Me in the Middle of the Forest because I couldn't walk as fast as him on the trail. Now he tells me that he will never go hiking with me. How do I resolve this? So let me just, okay, I ran up the stairs to get my charger to make sure. You're laughing. I feel like Bisa would like this one too because she likes hiking. And I can guess she wouldn't like to be just left alone on a hiking trail by herself. So I actually saw this post. Oh, you saw this post? Oh, wow. Okay, I'm just plugging you guys in to make sure the space doesn't cut out. It's too good. Okay, I see a hand up. Go for it while I'm just navigating this technologically.
I just want to say that I don't know if you've heard my story before, but I'm a type 1 type 1 diabetic, and I only have the back half of my left foot. All of my toes and my forefoot have been amputated. And my right foot, my heel was shattered. So my entire heel bone was removed surgically. And I do have a hole that's been there for a couple of years that doesn't want to heal because I stand and walk on it. So, you know, I've got some pretty shitty balance. And when I do go out with a girlfriend, she's always 10 feet ahead of me, stopping, turning around, and waiting for me. So it's always a fight because I'm a lot slower than her. You know, she's short and she's quick on her feet, but I'm just, you know, kind of waddling along, trying to make it without falling over. So that's always been something that we've battled over. But I don't know. Sometimes you just gotta try and, I don't know, work it out. See if you can pick the speed up a little bit and ask them if you try to help bring up the speed, maybe they could, you know, come down and meet you at a certain point, you know, so that it's more equal for both of you.
100%. And I had heard little parts of your story, but now I have a much better picture on your story. So thank you so much for sharing. I have much more context in this situation. So, I from what I'm hearing, there's only to some extent that you can improve it on your end. You have actually some physical limitations. So in this situation, knowing your worth, that you can try and move a little faster, but there's only to some extent you can move faster. They really do need to slow down if they care about you. So yeah, that is something that, if someone knows your worth, they would slow down for you and think that's completely okay to do that. And you can try not to walk excessively slow on your end. You're not trying to rub it in. Which I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you're doing your best to walk, at their pace, which is natural. But I appreciate that you can resonate to some extent to this story. Are you like wanting to weigh in right now, or
Well,
Peter?
I was just gonna say that from what I remember in the comments on that post, people were saying that, like, what she said in the comments. It's not really about the walking. Like, that was like him. He just didn't like her. He was being a dick to her. He had, like, the way that you treat, like, you don't treat someone like that, even as a friend, if you care about them. Leaving them behind aggressively like that, to the point that they're like almost in tears or whatever, like, that's just, you don't treat people like that. Like, she wasn't going like unreasonably slow. She said she was super fit. Like, I don't know what she was doing with this like loser of a guy.
Yes, I think this is a great one way. Knowing your worth, that you should not be putting up with this. I'm going to read you guys the story because this one is definitely worth the read to figure out what is going on for this poor girl that's dealing with this. Okay, so this one was a 35-year-old male, 25-year-old female. So before, my boyfriend and I used to go hiking every weekend, and it was super fun. I am quite fit, but I am not the strongest one physically. I went to hike 25 kilometers per day, and I enjoyed it. So it's an insane amount, by the way. Now, every few months, my boyfriend yells on me out of nowhere that he is not interested in hiking with me because I don't squat daily like his previous girlfriends do. He tells me that he will not go hiking with me and that he will
Oh,
find new
fuck this
friends.
guy.
I know, I know it's pretty bad. It keeps getting worse. Hiking with me and will find new friends and will be hiking with them. And quotation, I can do whatever I want while he hikes. I don't understand it. I am fit and slim, and I am getting hit on almost every day at my work by guys who give me compliments on my body. My body didn't change at all. I didn't gain any additional weight. I like my body. I like what I see in the mirror. Today we went hiking. I even paid entrance fees to the park for both of us. At the trail, he started walking super fast, almost running. I asked him to be a bit slower so that we could enjoy the hike and talk while hiking. I didn't feel super well, and it was not comfortable to run to follow him. I asked him once again to please walk in a bit slower pace. I felt he wanted to humiliate me once again about my body, and he kept telling, "You need to walk super fast. We didn't come here to hike." He got mad and he left me in the middle of the forest. He kept running and walking super fast until he was super far away from me. He was showing off that he can be super fast. I was left in the middle of the forest. Fortunately, I was able to come back to the parking. I cannot imagine this situation happening to other adult couples. Like, you invite a girl to a hike and then don't care about her, and you run from her. Now he tells me that he will never go hiking with me again. That's the end of the story.
Okay, but also the
Oh,
fact
thank
that he
goodness.
said, like, we're not here to hike. Like, what? What else are we here for?
Yeah,
We're here
weigh
to
in.
break up, darling. And that's basically what he was saying. Ew, run away from that guy. Just run away.
Yep. Does anyone else want to weigh on this story, guys? Put all of your knowing your worth skills to the test. Armand, go for it.
Okay. So I just want to put out there that, uh, I don't much like this person, but I think with these questions, it's really easy to just get on the side of you know, the plaintiff. I don't know what they use, the poster. And, it seems to me like they maybe should have, he was being pretty indirect, is what it sounds like to me. There was something about their hiking that he didn't like or that he didn't appreciate. And instead of talking to her about it, he tried to outrun her and tell her he should do more squat or she should do more squats and stuff like that. And, I don't think, once again, not that I think this person's a good person, but we never really figured out what his grievance is. He just, there was something that was bothering him, and it seemed like it kind of manifested in a couple of different bad ways. And yeah, I mean, it would have been good if, you know, she dumped him, but, before doing that, been like, okay, like, what, what could I do? Or like, what is the bigger problem here? I don't know.
Oh, that's a tough one. I appreciate you trying to sell that, because I was way too quick to jump to the conclusion that, he was the bad guy. And she is the one telling the story, so she could have made up some of this stuff, or exaggerated. But as you started going and you get back to the squats part, and it's like, dude, I don't know. He's got like body image things and he wants her to look or be a certain way, I feel like, still, which isn't ideal. But I like I was too quick to jump to the conclusion, but thank you for confirming my conclusion about him. That's all.
Thank you for all the perspectives. I love this.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get out from under the squats thing. Unfortunately, you
Yeah.
know. So, but I don't know. I think even that was kind of, I don't know, almost like a symptom of.
Yeah, it almost sounds a little weighted too, like she's real sensitive about it, and maybe he didn't say it quite that way, but it is hard to know from what we heard.
Anyway, I'll let the expert get back to it.
No, you guys bring up valid points. We don't know. This is a one-sided story, and we're making assumptions. Let's say this happened to me. God forbid I was not with Armand. I was with someone who I went on a hike with, and they ditched me. And then this happened to me for the first time. And what am I going to do with something like this? So as soon as this happens, as soon as I walk back to this car and I see this man again, I'm going to be like, I did not appreciate, I felt abandoned, because I would feel abandoned, that you just started running without, much warning at all. And you just left me in the middle of this forest. Um, and, that's something that is not okay with me. And then, where is that coming from? Like, is hiking that important to you that someone needs to be on your, exact same pace? Like, please explain what's going on from your end. And I would listen to what they have to say. And I would ask them if I'm not able to hold your pace while hiking, like, is that a deal breaker for you? They would have to think about it. And if it is a deal breaker, good to know now. You don't want to be with someone like that if it's that important to them. Or if they say, no, look, like, it's not a deal breaker. That's why I preferred you didn't come, or we don't hike together. Then I have to think about, as a person, is that something I'm okay with, to never go hiking with this person because I'm just not good enough? Can I be okay with that? Can I compromise? Or is there a version of like this that we can do together that I'm okay with, that he's okay with? But it is not okay for this to repeatedly happen again. Like, I should not be abandoned a second time. We need to have a proper conversation about it, and we need to have a good plan in place to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. And if it is something that's important, and he's going to criticize me about not doing enough, like if we're just living our normal life and he's telling me I should squat more, because I can't hike with him. Like that's not okay. Like, so we got to know what we find okay and what we not find okay. And if someone is not treating us okay, don't sweep that under the rug. Don't be like, oh, next time the hiking's going to be better. No, it's not. No, it's not. Like,
Okay, well, also squats have nothing to do with hiking, so
yeah.
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Well,
Also,
not to
squats are
what if
mention,
really
something
like,
had happened to her? Like, that's
yeah,
not safe
it's
for
awful.
him to have like left her alone in the forest like that. What if she never made it back to the car? What if he got back to the car before her and was like, you know what? I'm so pissed off. I'm just gonna drive away and leave her here. Like, it's just unacceptable behavior. Like, I would never tolerate that. I think that they should break up. I don't think they should be together.
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's someone who knows their boundaries. Houdini.
Boys ask girls to do squats because they want butts to look a certain way, right? That's the thing, right? Isn't that what the deal is?
Usually.
Yeah. So
Or maybe his life goal is to do hiking in a very small cave, and he needs her to be good at squatting so she'll fit.
There's all
she
sorts
should
of
have knew that
twisting.
there was something wrong the instant that he compared her to his ex-girlfriend.
Yes,
oh
yes.
yeah,
Good catch. Good catch. Yes. Mazda, I saw you became a speaker. Was there anything you wanted to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, dude. I think he's looking for someone like David Goggins as a partner, dude. He's just maybe he just needs some like alpha female super athlete. Yeah, dude. I think he's just missing out. I think he just saw some David Goggins and he got jealous and he just really wanted someone like that as a partner. But I don't know if there's someone who could like measure that. So, and then I thought it was like kind of strange how he was literally leaving her, bro. That's like the most obvious sign. He's like, I'm running away from you. She should have taken like, dude, that's like a huge red flag. um, but yeah, I guess she didn't see it, but yeah, that's definitely the next thing is to like have a serious talk and understand what's going on. Dude, I really felt like he was White Goodman, dude. He's like, I see you slacking in the gym. Someone missed their squats today.
she should have gone back to the car, taken it, and left his butt there. Like as soon as like he took off.
Oh my gosh, this is such a good laugh. I appreciate you guys. Yeah. And you know what? If he is someone that, really wants someone like David Goggins and he's not willing to compromise because, that's where his boundaries are, that's what he defines as great. He should get with like an Iron Woman or some woman that can like really keep up
Yeah,
with him or
some
exceed.
fitness influencer girl that does selfies or
Yeah.
whatever. Sure, go for it, bro.
Like if it's that important, it's okay to have preferences, but like don't make someone feel bad if you know this is that important to you. Like go find someone like what you're looking for. So, yes, that was a good laugh. That one, I appreciate this story. Okay, okay, this
Wait, I
one,
remember, dude. This one
yeah,
will make you laugh. So, remember in Grown Ups, dude, how that dude was like, he was like biting the girl's bicep because he was really into like
yeah,
sporty women. Dude, maybe he's just like a closeted version of that, and that's what he really wants, and he's been hiding his feelings this whole time. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. And it's good to know that if that's what he wants, like that's what he should go for, and not make other people feel bad.
He needs to do
So,
some squats and think about himself, I think.
yeah, yeah. I think he should really think about it while squatting himself. I agree. I agree. It's very good advice for him to start knowing himself. Um, Amazing input, guys. Okay, next one. So 31-year-old female, 34-year-old male, seeking advice on how to communicate with my partner that he is rude to me in our relationship. This one's a bit of a short backstory. So I am tired of my relationship with my partner. We have been together for 7 years, and this is our first and only relationship. At the beginning of the relationship, he would behave rude. This is, yeah, at the beginning. At the beginning of, sorry, I had to just double check I read it right. At the beginning of the relationship, he would behave rude to me in front of his relatives and family. I've been communicating this frequently, and though there is some improvement, the problem still exists. My concern is that even after frequent communication, he continues to behave rude to me, not support me in front of people, and overstep my boundaries. He He makes jokes about me in front of close family, and nobody finds it funny. My partner really does care for me, but the way he is going about a relationship is all wrong, and my patience is running out. How do I communicate to my partner that he is being rude to me in front of other people? Life partner does not know how to behave in a relationship. Um, all right, so if you had a friend like that coming to you with this problem and you're the relationship expert, how do you think you would handle this one? Any brave souls in the audience?
I'm brave, but I don't know if my friend wants the advice here either. I don't know. They sound like, like you gotta like. They sound like, I don't know. They sound like they're like giving up, or they just want to quit, or like don't want to like, I don't know, engage with the complaint. Kind of. That's my first instinct.
Yeah, Andrea.
I would want to know, like, I know we don't have that context, but I would like to have a specific example of what, like a specific statement that was communicated to close family. Like, I feel like there's not enough context. Like, I'm not saying I don't believe that he is not speaking rudely about her, but I do believe there has to be like some clear context as to, well, what did he bring up, or what statement came up that hurt her feelings. And potentially when we know the root of what was said, then it can be, a lot easier to be able to communicate to him, listen, no, when you said this specific statement, this is how it made me feel, rather than saying, I feel like you speak rudely about me to, like, in front of close relatives. Like, I feel like there's not enough context as to what upset her, what he actually said that made her feel that way. But that's just me.
Yeah, and I find myself wanting the victim to defend herself or whatever, but that makes me feel a little icky. But I guess I need more context. Maybe that's part of it. Or like, did one of your family members say, like, notice as well and mention it to you? Like, need some context or something.
I'm speaking from experience too, that I have, someone in my life where the family isn't very nice to her, and I actually ask her, what specific statements have they made that made you feel that way? So that I'm speaking from a very personal experience with a friend who's experienced this before. So that's why I'm sharing this with all of you.
Well, yeah, Houdini.
It's a tough one. That's all I was going to say. It is. This one's, it's a tougher one to, like, I feel a certain way after hearing it, but I'm not sure if that's right. Kind of.
Yeah. And I love Andrea's input because she's absolutely right. It's so easy to make assumptions that we understand the situation when we don't have specific examples. And so if you do have a friend that comes to you, like Andrea does, any one of us could have had this situation. Asking them for specific examples is a great way to start to be able to help them more accurately. And so, one thing that could come up is that, yes, he thinks he's improving. Maybe he thinks he's perfected this whole problem. And she's like, you've absolutely not perfected it. Have this whole chunk of things that you keep repeatedly doing. And maybe he just doesn't know what that is because it's not specifically pointed out. Or it could be that she's being great at communicating. She's explained every single thing specifically in his behavior that he does that he's done wrong, and that she's told him exactly what she needs from him to be able to not feel crap in those situations, and he's just not doesn't want to change anymore. And if it's the second situation, which I'll admit it's hard to fully be in that situation because a lot of us don't communicate directly. If I ask someone, do you think you're communicating directly, they'll say yes, and then I'll tell them to explain the situation, and then I'll be like, okay, you've been very indirect in what you've been saying. It's hard for the other person to know what you want. Usually that's how it happens, but assuming you did a great job communicating specifically all the situations you're bothered with and what you want them to do, which is the correct answer, and they're repeatedly not doing it, that's a problem. And that is for you to know your boundaries, that that's not okay for you to bring up something that's hurting you multiple times and have them not show any signs of improvement. So she did say he improved, but not improved enough. And so, having a sit down and being like, look, I have brought this up on 3 different occasions. I told you how hurtful it is to me and how bad I feel when this happens, and I just haven't seen progress, and I don't feel cared for because it keeps happening again, and this is something I'm not okay with experiencing. This is unacceptable in the relationship. I really need it to improve. So I really need to talk about it. We need to come up with a plan, and it really does need to improve. That's why I hope at the beginning of relationships, or when you're still trying to figure out if they're the one where you want to spend the rest of your life with them, that you are able to see that they do care and they are able to show improvement and growth, and it doesn't just end, or if you're married with someone, that's not it's not acceptable to be like, oh, I have them, they just have to put up with what I am now. That's just how it is. You have to be okay with improving, because that's what will make your partner feel more loved, and equally they should be willing to grow to make you feel more loved. It's a two-way street. It's very possible that he says, I've been improving on this, I have been working on it, and even you admit that I have improved. It's just something that I find difficult to improve on. But he can also feel like maybe he's asked her to improve on multiple things and has seen no growth, and so the motivation for him to keep working on himself when he's seeing no growth from her is something that's also holding him back. So it's just, we got to have these tough conversations and communicate really clearly and figure out what is the heart of what's going on. And I think quite a few of you mentioned that figuring out what the heart of what's going on is really important. A lot of them, I think it was Armand, there's a lot of symptom behaviors of resentment building up. But we got to figure out what's really going on. Andrea, I saw you quickly unmuted there.
Yeah, I guess I would want to know, like, if I was in her situation, I would want to know the root as to, why did you say such statement? Why was it said? Where is it coming from? What is the outcome, or what is the reaction that you wanted from, if it's in front of the family, when we say things in front of a big group of people, right? That's a lot of people in a room like that. You're either making a statement or you're trying to get some kind of reaction, right? And so I would want to know the root of, why did you say this? Help me understand why you said such statement and what you were hoping in terms of a reaction. So it would help me understand where we can maybe help with the communication aspect of it. Maybe the way that you feel you are communicating it is coming across this way with that reaction, but it's actually quite the opposite. So I would want to know the root of why such statement was said. But that's just personally what I would do.
Yeah, and understanding where it's coming from and why it's happening can really help figure out what is fueling this. And it's quite likely there's a misunderstanding going on there, and figuring that out is really helpful. On one end of the spectrum, it could be a really terrible execution of someone appreciating banter and thinking that's funny, and that they want to highlight how great their relationship is in front of their family, and they're doing the worst job at it. And you as their partner are just taking it completely the wrong way, and you're not bantering back, and so he feels let down every time that happens, because that's what he's trying to do. And imagine that was the reason of all of this going on, which is crazy. And on the other end of the spectrum, so delicious, but we can only unpack it if we ask these questions. So I appreciate that. That was really great input. Last Reddit question for the day. Okay, so 21-year-old male, 19-year-old female. My boyfriend playfully slapped me yesterday looking for advice. Okay, so let's hear this one out. Yesterday, my boyfriend and I were hanging out. He picked me up from my house, but I could tell he was in a really bad mood because he was yelling at me on the phone for no reason the entire time, and I couldn't figure out why he was directing his anger at me. However, I didn't want to further upset him, so I got ready like he told me, and when he was there, I came out. When when we got in the car, he had two of his friends with him, one of them of which was His brother, actually. We got to the movies. He was walking 10 feet ahead of me with them, and he yelled at me the entire time. I tried to calm him down, and that's why his brother said, "Why do you let him talk to you like that?" Then he said, "I have your back. Let me know if he is still acting like that." So once the movie was over, we stopped at a gas station. He called me a name, so I told his brother. His brother then had a conversation about how he was treating me, and when he got back in the car, he playfully slapped me in the face. It didn't hurt and I laughed it off, but we argued a little bit before he dropped me off. I told my mom about it and she was very upset, and she says that whether he was playing or not, he still hit me, and I told her he was just playing around and should let it go. I'm looking for advice on the situation because maybe others may have a better outlook on the situation. Let's say you had a friend or a daughter or any combination of who could be asking you this. What do you think if someone said that to you? How would you give them the best advice you could? No pressure.
Under no circumstances is a slap in the face ever, like, it's non-negotiable. It just should not happen. I don't care what circumstances. It is never okay to be physically hurt like that. I've seen, like slapping on the bed. I think for everybody that maybe, for some potentially it might be a little play fighting, right? But I think in that specific context, it was abusive. I don't think that was play fighting whatsoever, and especially on the face, that specific location of the body to me is not playful. But that's just my opinion.
I appreciate that. Yep, I'm hearing some strong boundaries there, which I appreciate. I love that you know that and you can speak to it with confidence. And yeah, I'm sure no one would try and attempt that with you. And if they did, you would really let them know that that's not okay and end things pretty quickly. So love that. Bita, would you like to give an opinion on this one, or you're okay?
I don't know what I think about this one.
Okay, that's okay. You cannot know how you feel about this one. Does anyone else want to explain how they feel about this one?
Yes, I agree with Andrea. I believe there should be some boundaries, and physical violence is not to be tolerated at all, even if it's playful or not. I mean, there's a very thin line, and it can be crossed very easily. So, if I was her brother or father, etc., I would strongly suggest to break up. I mean, some things are not worth to communicate and try to make, because they are so young, etc. She might find someone who might appreciate her better in that sense. So there must be some boundaries, and it can escalate if it's tolerated too much in that stage. That's what I think, at least.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm hearing strong boundaries, and I like that. Yeah, it's
Marry the brother.
married the brother. I appreciate that. The brother was so supportive, but I guess you're also married into the family. Like, I don't know how close they are, but yeah, the brother definitely seemed like, the guy who understands better values. For sure. I love that. Yeah. And I chose to kind of share this relationship Reddit question with you all because let's say her mom didn't have this strong reaction. She was kind of unsure if this was crossing a boundary or not. She kind of justified it as being playful. When her mom said that this was quite concerning, she was defending him and saying, no, it was okay. And it's, for some people, it's not clear that this is a boundary. And so a lot of things can cloud our judgment. They might be really good looking. I don't know. There could all be all sorts of things at place, clouding our judgment. So this could be the beginning of potentially an abusive relationship that could turn into domestic violence. And so being aware of the very early signs of something like this is really helpful, and or knowing them to be able to advise someone that comes to you and maybe shares a story like this with you. You can be aware that this could be the beginning of a very abusive relationship, and catching it early and getting the person to really think about what their boundaries are, what is okay, what is not okay, and being able to strongly communicate that, like Odin did, like Andrea did, if that is a boundary for them. I will say on one end of the spectrum, there could be a version of this, obviously not in this context where he's upset and he's passively aggressively communicating this in this way. Like I have friends where they just like a bowl of monkeys, and they like, it's a very thin line, and I tell them, they're play fighting, and they're just doing like tumbling around with each other, and for them also, even though they are, they're doing it very playfully, and they're not angry, sometimes even that, when they do get angry, they get confused where the line is, and they have come to me being like, I did this, or like he kind of grabbed me like this when he was upset, and I don't know if that's crossing a boundary. And so just be very careful, especially with physical stuff. And naturally, sometimes guys can be stronger and they might not realize, how much force they're using. And so it's really important to just know how you feel about that and know where the line is and call it out when you feel like it's getting close to the line. Because even if you're doing it playfully, when you're angry, you can feel like, oh, it's playful, but that anger starts creeping in, and it could now be something that's very border to abusive. So we got to be careful, and we have to know the signs, know the boundaries, and stand up for ourselves, to avoid being in situations like this. And something to do very clearly, that might help at the very beginning of a relationship, say, I have very strong boundaries that are deal breakers. If someone cheats on me or is, physically abusive to me in any way, they are automatic deal breakers for me, and they are unacceptable behavior that I'm willing to put up with. And so that person is now aware from the beginning that if they lay a hand on you in any way, even playfully, that they could lose you immediately. And so that could prevent a lot of things from the beginning if you express your boundaries very clearly. And I know for a lot of people, they feel like they don't need to, because we're, you know, everybody kind of understands that these things are not okay, but please don't assume someone understands this. We have no idea how they were brought up, or, what they have witnessed as being normal. So we have to be clear with what is okay with us, and knowing our worth, that we're absolutely okay to have feelings about what is okay and not okay, and stand by them. I feel like looking back on the Reddit stories I picked, I should have ended with the being ditched at the hiking one, because that was like a laugh, and I wanted to end on a positive note. So I really should have reordered them. So I'm gonna try and do better next time, and try and end on a more lighthearted one, so we go away feeling like, happy and jokey and things like that. So I do apologize on my end. I did not do a good job with ending on on a positive high note, and I will work on it. But I'll give you guys this would be a great time if you want to ask a question, have any comments, have any stories, anything you want to share before we wrap up. The floor is yours if there's anything you want to say.
I've got a quick question. So, like, sometimes when you want to have high standards for yourself and not being taken advantage of, what are some good standards to have? Like, sometimes it feels like when you're like starting a relationship, you really want to get to know the person, and sometimes they might be like they're busy, or like they're not matching the same enthusiasm a little bit, and you're not really sure um, if they're interested. Sometimes they might just be like, I really have studies, but then how do you know when studies is the excuse and like when it's not? And how do you regulate like good standards for yourself when you're starting to get to know a person, for example?
Great question. Does anyone want to weigh in on this one, and have anything they think they can add to it before I answer it? Okay, we got listeners. That's okay. So with this one, at the beginning, I kind of communicated that, there's a whole list of things that you can have preferences on. And so I've created quite a detailed list, so I can give you access to that, and you can kind of figure out where your preferences are, what your deal breakers are, what your must-haves are. So that's free to anyone who wants to have access to the list. Just DM me, so I'll send it to you, Mazda. But you bring up a good point in communication, and how often you communicate is a common problem people have in the dating phase, because it's very likely that you're not both going to have the same communication amount, because you're two different people. And figuring out when it's just someone stringing you along or not interested, and not being able to, be direct and say, sorry, I don't, I'm not feeling like you're the one. So, just being direct and honest about how you're feeling. So not everyone is self-aware or able to be brave enough to communicate that. So no, this is where your knowing your worth kind of comes into play. If someone's not responding, if you ask a question and someone doesn't respond to you in 24 hours, 48 hours, and you kind of follow up, and they've given no reason for why they're not responding, and you follow up and, kindly ask, is everything okay? I know I haven't heard from you in, 2 days. I was just checking in because, you know, I was waiting for your response. You can honestly say how you're feeling. And, if they don't respond to that or don't give you a good reason for why they took so long to respond, um, then that's good to know, because then you can kind of see if that crosses a boundary for you or not. If it's okay to, feel like knowing your worth is, if you respond to people within 24 hours, it's reasonable to want that from someone else. And, if someone has a good reason why they can't do that, you can be flexible when you hear the reason, if they're worth it. Or if they're just not willing to do that, then you can, have the information to know, um, is that good enough for you? Do you feel like you need something better than that? Or do these people have good reasons for why they're doing that, and that you're willing to compromise? But someone who just leaves you unread and doesn't respond to you, and only responds to you sometimes, that's not a good sign of someone who knows your worth and treats you great. So please be aware of your worth. It's not okay for someone to just not answer your question without a good reason. So because if you would do that for someone else, then it's okay to expect that in return. But please don't do it secretly. Like, don't expect it and then get mad if they don't do it, without saying anything and letting it build up. As soon as you get upset about something, it's okay to address it. And, if you're on a term where you can see them in person or video chat with them or phone call, each degree of closer you are to in person or like video chat, the better chance you have at communicating it better, and having and seeing their reaction, and being on the same page. A lot of the time, we're not on the same page, and texting can sometimes people can't express themselves properly over text. So I would recommend addressing it as soon as it's a little bit annoying that someone's not meeting your expectations, and just understanding where they're coming from, and seeing if you can work it out. So um, don't let it fester. Address it quickly if someone's not doing it, and just have an honest conversation. Someone that is amazing will also treat you amazing. And I know with Armand, like, I don't want to generalize to male or female, but some people are just not the best at texting, and that exists. And the thing that you have to take into consideration is, do they care about your feelings when you say, hey, you don't respond to me in 48 hours, and I would really appreciate someone who responds within 24 hours. Is that something that you can do? That's a very direct ask, and it gives them the opportunity to say yes or no and explain themselves. And, they may say, texting is just so hard for me. I'm a terrible texter, but I can send you voice messages, or I can call you for 15 minutes a day. I would really prefer that. Or, maybe I can text you here and there throughout the week, and we can, video chat, or I love meeting in person. Like I would prefer if we just kind of texted logistics and then met each other in person like 2 times a week, or for the weekend or something like that, and you can have just an honest conversation of where you're at. And a lot of the times you'll see that someone is not willing to um, do what you are wanting to feel happy, and that's okay, because you can sift through them quickly if they are showing no signs of growth or caring about your feelings. Compromise is always possible, but if they're not really caring in any way, and they're not changing in any way, and they don't have other great qualities, then you know your worth, and you know you deserve someone amazing. So hopefully you have a better understanding, and if you're confused, you can always message me, and I'm happy to help you figure out where you're at. All right, I see love hearts, I see good. Okay, so if there's any other questions, just quickly unmute yourselves or request to speak. We're all here to support each other. All right, beautiful. Thumbs up, love hearts, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming, and we will have another Twitter space next week, touching on a new skill, and practicing all of the skills we're learning through the Reddit questions, which are a lot of fun. And I'm going to work on finding ones that end on a lighter note. So with that, have an amazing week, and I wish you all the love life of your dreams. Have a lovely night. Bye-bye, everyone.